This printer can print up to 10 lines per second. This printer can print up to 10 lines per second.
Okay, welcome to lesson 11, input. So I'm going to show you two ways to input some information using JavaScript. Okay, so get your bare bones HTML going. Pause this, copy this if you need to. Go ahead. So the simplest way is by using something called prompt, but we're going to create a JavaScript variable to store some information here. So let's call it name equal prompt. And with prompt, you can put some text in the prompt, like input, or not input, I'm going to say enter. Enter your, whoops, boy, a lot of mistakes, huh? Enter your name. Okay, so let name equal prompt, enter your name. Let's go ahead and run that. Save. And you can see that Google Chrome is a Google product. Chrome put up this little window here, and see how it says enter your name? That's what we typed in there. So I'm going to say Jim. Okay. It didn't do anything. It didn't do anything because we didn't tell it to do anything. So let's go back to the script. Let's do this. We need to output it somehow. So let's output it on the console log for now. So console log name. So we're just outputting this name, which we're getting from the text that we input, into the console log. Save that. Run this. Whoops. I got to open my console log, don't I? View, developer, JavaScript console, and there it is. So that was the variable we put in there. Now we could output it right into the HTML, but we didn't write HTML for that. Let's go ahead and do that. So HTML, I'm going to create a paragraph with an ID called output. And then down here, I need to grab that. In JavaScript, I need to grab that HTML element called output. So let output equal document get element by ID, get element by ID output. Okay, so now we have that. And then so first line, we're gonna grab this HTML element, we're gonna put it into this JavaScript variable. We're gonna ask the user for their name. And then here we are going to output the name. Output dot inner text equals name. Let's get rid of this console log. Let's get rid of a whole bunch of lines there. Save that. Run it. Enter your name. I'm going to say James. And so we outputted right into the HTML, right into our web page. Okay, so that's one way to do it. Prompt is okay, but prompt is really a function of the browser. And I'd rather keep all of our information and data in HTML and in the JavaScript so we can control it better. So one way to do that is we're going to create a text input. This is an input tag. ID equals, I'm just going to say name, because this will be a name. And then we want to give it a type, the input type, which is text. And then we can have something called a placeholder. Placeholder. And that is text that's actually going to go in the text box. So in that text box, I want to say, enter your name. Okay, now we need to, I got too many quotes here. Need to close this. Close this input. Okay, so let's go ahead and just see what that text box looks like. Save that, run it. Oh, it's got the old prompt here. Test. Okay, so here's what the text box looks like. We have the old prompt down here, which I need to get rid of. Where's that prompt? Let's get rid of that. Okay, so we've got an input here and we got an output here. So let's go down here and grab our input. Let input equal document get element by ID, and that's name. You know what, I'm going to change this input to name because that's a more descriptive name of our variable. So we're grabbing a name, we got an output here. So, okay, so one other thing we need to do is we need to build, include a button. I'll show you what that's going to do. I don't know, something about buttons I really like. They're fun. They're interactive. I guess that's it. I'm just going to call it BTN for now. Not very descriptive, but if I had more buttons, I'd give it a more descriptive name. So that's button. Close the button. Oh, right here in between those greater than and less than, I'm going to put some text. Let's just say, I'm going to call it submit. That stands for submit your information. Save that. Now, what we're going to do, let's see what this looks like. Okay, so you see how I have the input field and I have a button called submit, which doesn't do anything yet, and I have something called object HTML input element, which doesn't have any information in it. That's why it gave us that weird output. So I've got this. Okay, let's grab this button down here. Let btn equal document get element by btn. Now I'm going to add an event listener. Remember we did an event listener. Click. So we're looking for a mouse event called click, and we need to run a function after we click. And let's call that function output name, because that's what it's going to do. It's going to output the name. Function called output name. You can click on that. And then I'm going to grab this and put it in here. Okay, we already have output HTML, and we're going to take that name and assign it to the text of the output. Let's see if that works. Enter your name. Jim G. HTML element. That didn't work. Let me look and see what I did wrong here. Okay, so here's what I forgot. Down here we have, well, let's look up here. We have a text input called name. The way we grab the text that's going to be inside that text box is we use something called value. So down here in our function, I actually have the ID of the input, and then I need to type in value. So what that's saying is obvious. What is the value of the text inside the name text box? And output that to the HTML element called output, or with the ID output. Let's see if that works. James G. There it is. Okay, so you see what we did. Now, oftentimes you just want to store the name in a variable and keep it for later. Like if you wanted to do, let's say you built a website and you only wanted your friends to be able to get into your website, you may ask them for their name and maybe a password. And then you do some analysis and make sure that that name and password was in, let's say, an array or an object that you created. And then if it was conditional, if it was, you would let them into your website. So we could do something like that. So that's it for input. Two types of input, prompt, and then we also use the input field. So that is actually it for all the basics of JavaScript. But we're going to do, in the next videos, we're going to do a ton of projects. And that'll give you practice with all the stuff you've learned and then some extra stuff. So the projects are really fun. And I encourage you to take all the information you've learned, all the techniques you've learned, and experiment. Start building stuff and experiment. And don't worry about making mistakes. You're not going to break your computer. The worst you can do is maybe lock it up with a while statement. So if you lock up your computer, you lock up your browser with an infinite loop or something like that, you can always force quit it. If you don't know how to force quit, just do a Google how to force quit on your PC. In my case, Mac. All right, see you next time.